American people are well positioned to face these challenges because of the economic historic gains that we have made under this president in the last 16 months.
The White House spinning like there's no tomorrow on the economy and actually claiming it's a historic success. The economy is historic under Biden, but for all the wrong reasons. The stock market plunging into a bear market and killing your retirement accounts. Gas prices almost hitting $10 a gallon in some places after Joe said he wanted to end fossil fuels. And inflation's crushing the American people, costing them thousands of dollars more per year. The endless stream of bad news not stopping Joe Biden from hitting the road, though, to bash Republicans and boast about his so-called successes.
20 million Americans had lost their jobs in the last guy. In fact, so many Americans lost their jobs that my predecessor became just the second president in history to leave office with fewer jobs in America than when he took office. Remember those long lines of cars stretching miles back waiting for just a box of food to be put back in their trunk? It wasn't just poor folk. It was working class folks, it was middle class folks. A lot of pretty nice cars in those lines. I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives. The problem is, Republicans in Congress are doing everything they can to stop my plans to bring down costs on ordinary families. I believe in bipartisanship, but I have no illusions about this Republican Party, the MAGA Party. They seem to think that the problem in America today is that working families aren't paying enough.
You know what I didn't hear, Dana? I didn't hear a lot of clapping.
Oh, you know what? But that was edited out.
Oh,
Yeah. That was, of course, yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. I was sitting here thinking, I'm listening, I'm thinking, I would just rip up the whole plan. Their whole communications plan, rip it up. But it's, again, as I said last night on exclamation point, it's not a communications problem. They have a policy problem, but they will not admit it. And it's the strangest thing I've ever seen. You know, they careen between everything is great or we can't do anything about it.
Right.
And you even have all of this throwing in of the towel by the cabinet. Like, you know, there's not much, yeah, we got nothing for you on that. And nope, not here either. That's like a collective throwing in of the towel that is just a slap in the face to the American people. And I try to find a silver lining. I try to find a hopeful spot. They're just not giving you one. It's almost as if they think, if we just keep talking about it, everything is going to change. And you can't do that. You have to play against type. What would happen if they were to all of a sudden just rip everything up, take a step back, and think for a second about what they are saying, what they are doing? Because right now it's just like pounding a square peg into a round hole, and it does not fit, and it will not change anything. And I feel bad for people. I feel bad for them because it's real. When you go to the gas station and you think, well, if I put 2 gallons in, I can afford to get to work today. But this keeps going, and people are I know a guy in Tennessee. Oh, I don't know. I read about him. He gave an interview to the paper. He quit his job because it cost him more to fuel up to go to work than he made in a day.
That's sad.
And it's really sad. And I just feel like he was supposed to be Mr. Empathy, and it's not coming through.
Yeah, so the central argument, as Dana points out, everything is great. It's all Putin's fault, and I can't do anything about it. Makes no logical sense.
And everything he had said there was you could buy if you had absolutely no memory of what happened, which was COVID. There was an upheaval. People were waiting in line for this. The fact that he made it about Trump is pretty amazing. When you look at that video, there's only one conclusion you can come to, in that he's not right. He's not well. He'd be a terrific president if things were fine and you had all the basics covered. But this is not that time. This is not the right person for a crisis. If you have a strong economy and you have, you have peace and prosperity, you can have a backslabbing boob like him. But right now, I mean, this is kind of scary when you see that, and the fact that he feels the need to yell louder and louder as if that's a point. And I think that comes to what you're saying. I don't think he's capable of thinking his way through these things anymore. I think it's, you can easily predict this disaster when he got elected. I mean, who's better at economic issues? Republicans. Who's not welcome for input? Republicans. So all you get is one half of the equation, and one half of that equation isn't even there. It's basically a zero. And so what do you do when you multiply something by 0?
Hold on, I know this.
You get a 0. You get a 0.
You went to purpose.
He only cares about himself now. It's like, if it doesn't affect him as a politician, as a leader, as a person at home, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. It's kind of frightening in a way.
Yeah, he's totally lost. Geraldo, He said a lot of things that just flat out were false. Would you like to say anything about all the falsehoods?
There are indeed some things that strain credulity, but I find it ironic that Greg, for instance, prefers Trump to Biden when you look at President Trump in the light of these January 6th hearings. And you see how absolutely crazy he became after the election and how close he came to impeding and, destroying the peaceful transition of power for the first time in American history.
What does it have to do with Biden?
Well, it has to do with you can't. Biden is an old fellow who's got some fragility and he's got communication problems, and he may, I don't know if he's as sharp as he always was, but if the alternative is his predecessor, we have to recognize it. Remember, I love Donald Trump.
Oh, please.
But please. I felt very close to him. I've known him 40 years. 40 years.
And then you turn the knife.
And what he did, he turned the knife in America's back. It was him that turned the knife. And that it is becoming clear now that Republicans are in a kind of denial. It is not shocking how many people support Donald Trump. What is shocking is how many people support Donald Trump who also believe that he did everything he is accused of doing by the day.
So why do they call it January 6th? It was one day. We're talking about an administration. Trump was president for 4 years. We had a great economy. We had peace. Oh my God, his personality upset you. The man you love so much, Geraldo, and now it just pains you. That was one day. All right, you can't compare the two. And by the way, no lie. As far as I know, what are the conclusions? You're just basing this on an emotional response. Are they saying he did anything wrong? I didn't expect to talk about this. I was talking about.
He incited.
You haven't proved that.
He was absolutely the driving force for what was the most traumatic,
in your opinion,
event to the American democracy.
Really?
I don't know how. How can you talk? Biden, I get sick to my stomach when I see the stock market.
Geraldo, that was not the most traumatic event in American history.
And I didn't say,
Come on.
You cut me off. I was going to put it in perspective.
Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Actually, I'm not sorry for cutting you off, Geraldo. Let's go to Judge Janine.
Yeah, let's stay to the topic. The topic is the delusional guy who is actually talking about the economic historic gains that we have in this country. This man is delusional. I'm telling you, he is delusional. You can't pretend there's a historic boom when the truth is people can't afford to pay for their gas, they can't afford to eat. And the baby formula in this country is under lock and key. We're living like a third world country when you see the shelves in the grocery stores, and it's just starting, this food shortage. It's coming, folks. It's going to get worse because of fuel and because of fertilizer. Now, in the USA, we've got the fastest growing economy. Let me tell you something. That's a lie. I looked up countries with faster growing economies than the United States, and I'm taking my time because you talked about Trump. Let me tell you who's doing better than us. Okay, Ireland's doing better than us. Chile, Turkey, Colombia, drug dealing Colombia, India, Greece, China, of course, is doing better. The United Kingdom, France, Italy, Panama, the Dominican Republic, Guyana, and I could go on. And these fools are talking about the historic economic boom that's going on in this country. They're lying to you. And let me make it even clearer. Every month you're paying a tax in the amount of $400 through this inflation. And because of his insistence on green energy, because Joe Biden insisted on shutting down fossil fuels and making us independent, now he's going on his knees to OPEC to beg for oil. And the cost of diesel is so much, it's actually curtailing heavy equipment use, reducing the number of hours that farm tractors can work. So how about that Build Back Better, folks, when the bulldozers and the tractors can't run anymore? The Biden administration is engaging in economic euthanasia. That's what we're suffering from in this country. They are killing Americans every month with their economic policies.
And we are losing to Panama, did you say?
Yes.
Guyana.
Unacceptable. We need to step it up. We definitely need to. I will not lose to Panama.
Colombia? That means we have to legalize drugs.
Yeah,
All right, Greg,
stop it,
enough.
Greg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.